Hi, welcome. My name is Dale McCluskey, and I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss the issue of fear, stress, and anxiety issues with dogs, because this is a very common issue. A lot of dog owners feel that they just can't overcome it, and something that they end up basically living with the dog. But what I'm going to show you is what I want to talk about today is to try to get you to see it from the whole issue of influence, of power, of dominance, believe it or not. Of course, when we talk about dominance, let's talk about influence itself and how a dog's decision making is impacted through this level of the roles themselves. So, how I equate or compare the issue of fear, of stress, is the example I use with dog owners is, imagine being the boss of a big company, with a couple hundred employees, and although you have there's the owner of the company, and you have this huge responsibility, just the stress and anxiety that comes through having that position with all the personality issues you have to deal with, the hiring, the firing, just the burden of that position, of that title, of that role. Although it may, power itself can give you kind of it can be a prideful thing, give you a little boost to your ego, but at the same time it causes stress and health issues. It causes all sorts of issues in the family. It just really can be a huge problem, very problematic. But then, and then imagine the boss of the company deciding for whatever reason that they're going to put you down into a file clerk position. There's going to be probably challenge to that, even though you're dealing with all the stress and anxiety of that position. You're going from what you, even though it's dysfunctional, into what you've known, into something that's not known. And so you're going to actually resist that. You're going to be very resistant to losing that position, because as humans we don't think very clearly sometimes. But what happened is after a couple of weeks, you moved into a file clerk position, and then it dawns on you that you don't have to deal with all the personnel issues anymore, and immediately even though you're making probably less money, you can punch in and punch out. You're on the clock, so to speak. And what happens is the burden and that stress of that role just lifts off your shoulders, and you start to feel better. Your health improves, you feel better. But this transitional process and the stress and burden it carries for your dog is no different. And so how a dog's mind reacts to this is a little different. This is where this whole thing about fear and anxiety comes from, because what happens in the natural world when dogs have the lead role in the wild, if there's strength and weakness and there's challenge through that, but there's balance. It's natural. So the dog that's in the lead role, in how that connection happens through nature itself is different. It's running on all cylinders, so to speak, and it makes sense to the dog. Now here in the human world, what's happening is, even though we have this type of thinking that somehow we have this cooperative relationship with our dog. That's why we're elevating these ideas up into about learning, and when we do that, unbeknownst to us, we're actually giving power to the dog, and through this connection, through what dogs feel, through this relational type of thing happening. And so what happens is, we're keeping certain elements of control through how we're interacting. We're not just giving it over. It's not the same thing as nature. It's not natural to the dog. So what it does is it causes even more stress on the dog, because they're trying to lay claim to this position. They're actually owning the dog owner in a sense. They're objectifying the dog owner, but we're trying at the same time to invoke certain elements of control over the dog, and it causes this type of a burden and stress. And so you see dogs react to that. I mean, they're and it's the ebb and flow of that interplay. It's that script that's changing back and forth. So you see a dog pulling back, the body's pulling back, the dog's mind has certain, the interplay of that has certain options. Okay, it goes into a challenge state. One option is to go forward and bite. Another option is to pull back. So what it is, it's like, if you ever seen protesters with picket signs, and they're surrounded by the police, what's their options? They're going to, oftentimes they go down to their feet, or they sit down, and it's not giving up. It's still challenge. I mean, even though they're going a different direction, they're still resistant. They don't want authority over them. Okay, they're rejecting authority. They're challenging. So even a dog is pulling back. In our eyes, because of the reaction levels of the body from what we see from the surface, we equate that. We'll interpret that and say, well, that's fear. Okay, what is it? It's a fight or flight response. It's challenge. And the problem with that is, and this is one of the real traps that dog owners and trainers get into, is because of that response, it'll trigger empathy. We'll feel sorry for the dog, and so what happens is we're in this pattern, this cycle of weakness, and the dog, it's like bad computer code. We're in this loop we can't get out of, and the dog, and so we respond